Alright, welcome back to grammar. Today we're looking at commas, and we'll see how far into this we can get. The first one here, of course, is items in a series. That's kind of a classic comma rule. If you have two things, you can separate them with the word and. If you have three, you need to separate them with comma, comma, and then the word and. That would be your basic items in a series rule. You can list all types of things: subjects, verbs, objects. In this example, I do all three, which allows you to add a lot of detail to a sentence. So it's also useful, in that sense. Now let's see, the next one here, this is an example. Items in a series. Now a good question that comes along with this is, can I leave out the last comma when you're listing items? Now the short answer academically is no, right? You're writing a formal paper, so there's actually a very good reason why you're going to want that comma in there. Creatively or online, a lot of writers today will leave that out. But there's probably a good reason why they shouldn't, and here it is. Let's see, I'll read this second example first. For the special, the BBC interviewed country singer George Jones's ex-wives, Johnny Cash and Kris Kristofferson. Now with the placement of a single comma here, instead of creating a list or items in a series, what this creates is an appositive phrase. And a positive phrase is where you have a comma after an item, and then you're going to define said item. So in this case, that would be defining George Jones's ex-wives as Johnny Cash and Kris Kristofferson, which, although not absurd, is not factually correct, right? They're bandmates, not partners. In this other example here, in the correct example with items in a series with that comma before the and, you can't misread it. For the special, the BBC interviewed country singer George Jones's ex-wives, Johnny Cash and Kris Kristofferson. Now let's get into the next part of commas. Okay, so as with research, when you're writing a research paper, you want to use a variety of types of evidence. When you're writing, you want to use a variety of different types of sentence openers. When you're writing, you also want to use a variety of different styles of sentences, as well as vary your word choice. Variety, is not just the spice of life, but it is the key to interesting writing. So in this section here, we're going to focus on different ways to open a sentence. So let's see. The absolute, the prepositional, gerund, participial, the dependent, is not focused on as much because we go over that in the previous lesson when we're looking at independent and dependent clauses. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at these. Absolute. In an absolute phrase, it consists of a noun or pronoun, a participle, and maybe a modifier. What the phrase does is it modifies the whole sentence. So in this case, you would see the season. We do have an article there, our definite article, the, our season, which is our noun here, nearly, which is our modifier, finished, which is our participial. Our participle. So yes, we have those elements there. The season nearly finished. Kobe Bryant and Derek Fisher emerged as true leaders. That was, the team after Shaq had left. Let's see. This absolute phrase comes from Viktor Frankl. Actually, a lot of these examples do come from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, one of the greatest books of all time. Or a book. It's a memoir. It's not like it's a work of fiction. It is it's a psychological book, and then the other half is a memoir. handicapped by her compulsion and bacteriophobic obsession. That's the absolute phrase, which is going to modify not only she, right? It's going to modify the whole rest of the sentence. She finally remained in bed all day, unable to do any housework. What this does is it sets up and explains the rest of the sentence. Like, why did this happen? Because of everything in the absolute phrase right there. Prepositional phrases are phrases that begin with a preposition. A preposition is a word that indicates location, time, proximity, or distance. So let's go ahead and take a look at some prepositions here. Prepositions are things that indicate time, location, proximity, or distance. About, above, across, against, apart, for example. Before, below, beneath. Down, for, and from are very classic ones. In, on, of course. To, over, outside. Up, upon, within, without, right? So these are, and with. These are some of the classic prepositions in the English language. And basically the rule looks like this example here would show you if you have a prepositional phrase that is of 3 words or longer, you want to separate your prepositional phrase from the independent clause, or the subject, verb, and object of the sentence. And we do that for clarification, but we only do that at the beginning. We don't do that anywhere else in the sentence. We'll get to that in a minute. One wonderful place to look for prepositional phrases is in the work of Dr. Seuss. There are just so many wonderful ones. Let me we'll look at a few of these. This is from Green Eggs and Ham. I could not, would not on a boat. I will not with a goat. I will not eat them in the rain. I will not eat them on a train. Not in the dark, not in a tree, not in a car you let me be. I do not like them in a box. I do not like them with a fox. So we see all those in red there. Those are our prepositional phrases indicating, distance, location, proximity, on a boat, in the dark. From Dr. Seuss's One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. Look what we found in the park in the dark. We will take him home. We will call him Clark. He will live at our house. He will grow and grow. Will our mother like this? I don't know. You see those prepositional phrases there in red. From Dr. Seuss's What Was I Scared Of? There I was, deep within the woods, when suddenly I spied them, a pair of pale green pants, with nobody inside them. We see the within, the with prepositional phrases there. And of course, this is the book that made him famous. This is his Cat in the Hat. Look at me now with a cup and a cake on top of my hat. I can hold up 2 books. I can hold up the fish and a little toy ship and some milk on a dish. And look, I can hop up and down on a ball, on the ball, right? And there we see numerous prepositional phrases, right, as he's describing what he's doing. From Oh, the Places You'll Go, the posthumously published Dr. Seuss book, often used and given as a graduation present. On you will go, though the weather be foul. On you will go, though your enemies prowl. On you will go, though the hack and cracks howl. Upward up many a frightening creek, though your arms may get sore and your sneakers may leak. So we have a lot of onward and upward prepositional phrases there. And here we see some examples of correct commas, correctly punctuated commas with prepositional phrases, and we're using the work of Ernest Hemingway to do this. So the first rule, right? We do not need a comma if our prepositional phrase starts a sentence and is less than 3 words in length. So we are not going to use a comma here. Just for years it had obsessed him, but now it meant nothing in itself. From Snows of Kilimanjaro. This is the classic place where you need a comma with a prepositional phrase, right? When it begins a sentence and it is 3 words or more. As he turned, comma, he stopped for a moment and looked at the church of Santa Maria del Giglio. Santa Maria de Giglio, from Across the River and Into the Trees by Ernest Hemingway. And the other 2 rules are, if you have a prepositional phrase in the middle of a sentence, we don't need commas around it. Just leave it as is. It's distracting otherwise. You had worked on summers on engineering projects and in the forest service, building roads, and in the park. I do see a typo there. I'll have to fix that. But we don't put commas around that phrase there. And then when a prepositional phrase ends a sentence, we also do not use a comma there. Just leave it right as it is. This is from A Farewell to Arms. A fine boy who had tried to unscrew the fuse cap from a combination shrapnel and high explosive shell for a souvenir. All right, so gerund phrases and participial. Let's distinguish those 2. So gerund, they both actually are phrases that feature ing verbs, but the gerund phrase is actually it's a verbal phrase that actually functions as a noun, as you'll see it here. Writing essays the night before they are due. This is a thing. This is an act. This is perhaps a bad strategy, but it is a thing that someone could do. Essentially, you could replace it with a pronoun like, that thing we were talking about in the previous sentence. That is not a good strategy, right? So a gerund phrase is basically writing essays the night before they are due. Is a phrase that functions like a noun. We have the rest of the sentence here, which is a verb, and then our object is not a good strategy. Let's look at an example here from Fight Club. Doing stuff to the food got to be boring, almost part of the job description. So we have there at the beginning. The participial phrase, although it is also an ing verb, is different because it's just a verbal phrase that sets up the sentence, and the very next word after that comma has to be the noun or the subject of the sentence performing the action that you just spoke about in the participial phrase. Working around the clock, the students finally finished their finals and research papers. Excuse me. So working around the clock, who was working? It was the students, right? So that's a classic misstep, though. Make sure when you're writing these that what comes after the participial phrase is the subject, right, of that participial phrase. The work of Leo Tolstoy has numerous examples of great use of participial phrases. Glittering like a diamond with bluish lights in it, from War and Peace. Or this example from Nabokov's Lolita. Avoiding Mona's cool gaze, comma, I talked literature for a minute. So that's your ing ending with the comma. I is the person who did the avoiding. There it is. It is a participial phrase. And dependent clauses, like we were saying earlier, are, a good way to open a sentence. You put that subordinate conjunction first. Since college is challenging, you have that whole dependent clause there leading into your independent clause. And there's an example here, but we have to pause. So that's it for this part of commas, and we'll pick up here with commas part 2. Thank you.